Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and I'm pretty excited to have Justin Rabackoff here in the studio with us here in Fort Lauderdale. So a couple things to mark for your calendar. First of all, April 6th, coming up this weekend, we got Cagezilla 55 going down here in Florida. If you want to watch some awesome amateur mixed martial arts competition, it's always fun to watch some guys trying to work their way up the MMA ranks. That is going down this Saturday, and also May 3rd through the 5th. The next NXL event's going down in Texas. So Justin, we're starting to get our way here into the 2019 season. Today, though, we are going to be talking about the first NXL Europe event. We're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about the top 4 teams. It was an interesting event. So to start things out, Justin, first of all, thanks for coming in, man. I always love talking to you. You're one of our best interviews, and we've known each other for a long time. I mean, I've known you since you were like 8 years old. So it's pretty cool to see you, emerge into literally one of the best paintball players ever to walk planet Earth. I mean, you have had quite an amazing career, and you're not done yet. The renewed fire that you have had this year, and we're going to get into this a little bit here, is really impressive to see because, and we talked about this, we had you on the show a little bit this year. We're going to be having Justin on the show a lot because he is one of our best guys. But, the fire that you've shown this year has been very impressive because you've been a little on cruise control for a little bit, which is insane how good you've been on cruise control. But, I mean, just between the two of us, you were on cruise control a little bit.
100%. I agree. Can't deny that, and I even admitted it. The cruise control thing, you couldn't have said it any better, and it's one of those things that I just needed to break out of that and then just become the best person and the best player that I possibly could.
Now, you still had your cruise control set to about 75, 80 miles an hour, so you were doing pretty well out there. But when you pin that thing to the floor, man, I mean, there's a reason why, paintball is a keep what you kill industry, man. Nothing is given to anyone. So yes, you were an outlier in the sense that your father was Steve Rabackoff. So you did grow up, training against us back in the day in the woods when you were a child, but you made the most of that and you had an innate talent to play the game. We're going to get to that a little bit here as you did win the Golden Barrel, the Top Gun title as the best killer at the first event. But let's talk a little bit about your overall impressions from the first event in Barcelona. So what was it like? How was the grass? How was the setup? We'll get into the competition here in a little bit. There were some new teams out there. And then obviously you guys didn't have the performance that you wanted to. You did make top 4. You took 3rd. But just what were your overall impressions before we start getting into the weeds?
I would say the overall impressions were... The city, I don't even remember what the city was. It was a city outside of Barcelona, so we were actually like an hour away outside of Barcelona.
Was it south or north? Because I remember last year or 2 years ago we were a little south.
I believe it was also south, but I think a little bit further. The hotel that we actually stayed at was probably one of the most beautiful hotels I've ever been at in my life. It was unreal. It was surreal.
Right on the beach?
It was right on the beach, but we were up in this cliff, and you can actually then go down into the beach afterwards. But, I mean, the hotel was absolutely beautiful. But the town was a little small. It was actually it was like a lot of farmland, so almost like out in the middle of nowhere at a place called Top 10 Sports. So it was a little small soccer place. The grass was... it was amazing. The grass was absolutely amazing. Probably some of the best grass that I've ever seen in the last 7-8 years. It was that good. It was like diving on turf. It was like playing on turf, but for the grass. So overall, I would say I would probably give the entire event probably 6.5, maybe 7. The only thing that's was bringing that up was the grass. The grass was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's always it's tough out there, and I do. When you're especially if you're playing the first attacker and you're diving constantly in the snake or on the D side, it's a little bit easier for the guys to get a start in the back, shoot your gun, and then you can filter up.
Yeah.
But it does preserve those knees, those shoulders. Most importantly, the knees and the shoulders go. If you're diving around, you can kind of see there on your screen what the grass looked like. So yeah, it's always nice to play in that lush grass.
And there's a running joke on our team that everyone says that I haven't dove since 2009.
Let me think. I'm trying to think if you actually have.
I dove.
Dude,
last
I don't think
event.
Are you sure?
I dove
sure?
last event, and I argue, and I do it until my face turns blue. But it's one of those, and they're never gonna let it go. But it's like the running joke on our team that I haven't dove since 2009.
Is that why you're like, I'm gonna shoot off the break and I'm gonna filter D side? I'm gonna go filter D side, and unless you guys die over there, then okay, I'll go to the snake side.
Yeah.
But something's going. I used to say when I was playing back in the day, I played a similar position. It was start in the back, shoot guys, and then go up front. But if I have to get and dive into the snake, something's going wrong.
Something's wrong.
It's not a good point if that's happening. So that's good. So the grass was nice and lush. Let's before we jump into the competition, you were rocking that golden barrel that you earned, and I do mean that in every sense of the word, as it was a pretty fierce battle between you and your teammate, Alex Mouse Goldman.
Yep.
You guys were neck and neck, and there was a couple other guys who were in the hunt too, but when you're talking about the overall killer, the guy that has the most amount of kills, you know, that you do need to go deep in the tournament to get that crown, because you know, the more games you play, the more chances you have to kill people.
Yep.
But you know, we talked a little bit about this when we had you on right after that event.
Right.
You know, you like you said, you were on cruise control a little bit, again playing really well, but you're one of the elite out there. There's only maybe 10 guys on any given day that can play as well as you can, but you had a big chip on your shoulder to come out. So in that battle, obviously that was an important thing for you to kind of get that golden barrel.
Yeah. I like to always say that none of that really matters. You know, I'm just playing like for my team.
Sure, of course you're going to say that.
Yeah, of course. But when Cena did come up to me before the finals and he said, you and Mouse are pretty much neck and neck going for the thing, I went out there trying to win it. It was the first time that I actually went out there and I was like, I'm winning this. It was the first time. And I think a lot of it had to do with, you know, me coming out and saying that I'm going to be a different player than I was. And I think it was kind of like more fuel to that fire that I had to be like, okay, here's an opportunity for me to prove, you know, talk the talk, you know,
to back it up
and not just say it, but also do it. Right. So I think that was one of those where it was more fuel that I needed to just go out there and be like, okay, this is exactly what I said I was going to do. I'm going to do it. Right. So,
well, when we were coming up, and you were raised the same way. I mean, look, I love the loud guys, you know, the New York Extremes and now the Aftermath. I love that. It's super entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
The Bears. But when I came up, it was all about self-praises, no praise at all. Don't talk about it, be about it.
Right.
It was all about the performance.
Yeah.
You could talk till you're blue in the face about how amazing you are, but
you
know, again, this is a keep what you kill sport.
100%.
And there are 5 players downfield or 10 players downfield that are going to want to take your glory away.
Yep.
Impact, you guys came in with a big chip on your shoulder this year because you did get knocked off your pedestal last year by Houston Heat.
Yep.
So yeah, it was just cool to see you, you know, talk about it, be about it, step up and kind of reclaim your title as the best guy out there.
Yeah.
Because there are so many, again, of those top level guys, the Fedorovs, the Alexander Burtnikoffs, the Archie Montemayor. I mean, there's every team has 1 or 2 of these guys, but it was cool to see that crystallize and for you to have that performance. So let's head into your performance here. How did you feel you played at this last event? Golden Barrel-esque?
Yes and no. I would say at times yes, and at times no.
Because you did get, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just have to say this. I mean, you won move of the event.
Yeah, I did win the move of the event, and like I said, at times yes, and at times no. And this is one of those things that I believe that our team just went into the event maybe a little too overconfident, and I felt like I had that same a little overconfidence. So. I believe that this is something that we're gonna, you know, dive into a little more.
Yeah, Impact
later.
will be the last team that we break down today. But yeah, but I just want to get your initial impressions on your personal.
For
performance.
my personal performance, I would say that I played. I would say that I played great. Right, I wouldn't say that I played amazing, but I played great. You have to make top 4. You have to be playing great. Of
course.
Right, you have to be playing great, and especially even though like the teams over there are not the teams over here. They can still beat you on any given day. Any of those teams can still beat you.
Well, and when we get into this top 4, and even a little bit below that, yeah, man. I mean, absolutely, those teams could beat you, and which we'll get into in a second.
Yeah, exactly. So I would probably give it a B-. If I'm gonna rate myself, I would probably get a B-.
Well, you know, B- isn't too bad. And you do, obviously, we're just getting things kicking off here slowly but surely for the 2019 season. We're only 2 events in.
Right.
Are you going to play any 10-man this year? Because we're going to be covering some 10-man here at Go Sports, so stay tuned for that.
I don't know. I've had a lot of people who have asked me if I'm going to play 10-man, and I had a lot of people ask me last year. It's one of those things where it's like I know that when I go there, it's going to be a lot of fun, but then at the same time where I'm like, I got other stuff going on, you know? But like, you'll probably see me at one. I'd like to play one.
I think you should go just because... 1, it would be fun to watch you play.
Yeah.
With that many bodies out there.
Right.
2, it seemed like it did light a little bit of a fun fire under the feet of guys that have been doing this a long time. Because,
I can see that.
you know, you get into a little bit of a rut. And I don't mean this, you know, like there's roads on the, you know, on Earth for a reason to get you from point A to point B.
Yeah.
But when you're doing the same thing all the time, I mean, yes, there's repetition to every sport. But when you're locked into the X-Ball format, you know, I know that this is your profession. You've been doing this as a profession for a long period of time, but you get locked in that rut. And I think that going to play the 10-man might give you a little bit of burst of that joy.
I could see that.
That we all started this game with.
Yeah.
And I think it would be kind of cool, one, just again, to see you play with 20 bodies out there and the moves that you could potentially do, with that in front of you and behind you, but also to kind of see what playing that would be like. Because, you never really got to play during the 10-man days. You were a kid when we were doing that.
No, I didn't play any 10-man.
We played together 7-man.
I played a lot of big games. I did a lot of big games, and I absolutely love those. Like, I can go out there and shoot 100 dudes in a day, and that's a blast to me. So I could see where you would say, like, it could give you some of that, just more
pure joy.
fire. Yeah, exactly. Because when I play those big games, like when I leave those, I am so happy. Like, just so happy to just be playing paintball, and there was nothing to win.
Yeah.
Right? You just go out there and you're just doing it just for fun, and going out there shooting 100 dudes in a day.
Which is no joke. Like, if you're really good at paintball, if you never played a big game.
I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah, and you're joining us just because you love tournament paintball. Thank you so much for enjoying tournament paintball. We love it too, but just playing in that huge, it's like surfing a wave, you want to go shred a little tiny, 3-foot wave, or you want to go like see what you're made of on a 100-foot wave.
Exactly.
That's what it's like when there's 2,000 people on the other side. But 10-man is the biggest organized version of a big game, and that's where the origin of the sport came from.
Right.
I just think it would be cool. I just thought I'd throw that question out there. Okay, so let's move on. Let's start talking about some of the newer teams that we saw in Barcelona.
Okay.
Let's start with Kiev United. So Kiev United, brand new pro team. So Slava leaves the ML Kings. Timon Tresser was also playing with 5 Star, and so he goes over there. What were your impressions on Kiev United? Because they did pretty good. 6th place.
Yeah.
6th place is not bad at your first event.
I would say any team that doesn't have a full team of All-Americans or, Russians, like Russian Legion, who don't have like an all-pro setup are going to probably struggle. They probably aren't going to do great. Yes, they'll make Sunday, but getting over that initial hump is going to be really difficult because most of the times it's those players that just aren't ready to be there. And even though they did all of the hard work and they made it to, the pro level, right? They came up from the SPL or whatever, the amateur division. It's a different level of play. No matter what, from D1 to pro, it is a different beast, right? So those players have a lot of learning to do, and I think that they can be good. I think they can be good, and they have a lot to with Keith and with Tim.
I was gonna say having Keith Brown on the snake side for you, which I'm waiting to see from Damage this year, is as Damage kind of struggled a little bit with offense at the first event in Vegas. But Keith Brown, Timon Tresser, and Slava can get down in that center. I mean, obviously, again, it was 6th place. And let's just touch on that real quick because, so they went 3-1 in the prelims.
Yep.
They beat Ignition, which is also a new team. We'll get to them in just a second. Then they lost to the Russians in a close game, 4-6.
Yep.
So they went 1-1 in the first day. Then they beat PP Arena and they beat 5 Star, Tim's old team. So they went 3-1, made it on, but then they lose to Heat and get blown out 1-6 on Sunday.
Just to go back on what I was touching on, Keith initially started the event playing as the 2. And when I first saw it, I was like, no, because that's what most of the pros go over there and do. They're like, oh, I'll let you go ahead, and
my
then
body's too valuable.
I'll try to clean up. Exactly. Because if I get shot on the break, there's no way we can win, right? And it's one of those, and he definitely had that feeling. But I'm glad that I don't know if he made the decision or if Tim or Slava or whoever made that decision, but it was the best decision that they could have made for their team, because initially he was playing the 2, and then once they put him as the 1, they started beating people up, right? He is the guy there.
He's the guy.
He's the guy.
Yeah.
And no matter how valuable he can be at the 2, he is one of the best ones in the game. But I can understand what they were thinking with it. But at the same time, put the guy in the spot that he's the best at. But overall, I would say that all the teams on Sunday, when it came to the quarterfinals, all the teams who lost were expected to lose, right? If I was a betting man,
in the
exactly,
there was no. We're going to get to an upset in a second, but
there was no upset. So if I was a betting man, then that's where I would have put all the money on those teams, and all the teams who were expected to lose, they did lose come Sunday.
Yeah, so just a team to watch this year with the roster that they have, and the fact that at their first event they did, and if you look at their scores, even getting blown out by Houston Heat in the quarterfinals, they still went 21 points for and 22 against for a -1. that's pretty good for your first event.
Yeah,
That's
that is good.
It's not bad at all. 6th place. So a team to keep in mind moving forward in Europe is Kiev United, and our first pro team that we've ever seen come from the Ukraine, which is really cool too.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and again, it goes to show you the national.
Yeah.
I mean, paintball is an international thing, man. I mean, it is, and
that's definitely something to be proud of when you can be the first team in anything in life. You can be the first of anything coming out of anywhere. Like that's definitely something to brag about, especially for those guys.
Yeah,
and come out and do as well as they did.
Absolutely, and again, just star that down. Just remember Kiev United as we move forward, because it could do something in the next 3 events.
Yep.
Ignition also, Stockholm Ignition coming in. Wanted to touch base about the Scandinavian style of play, even though unfortunately Ronhold Blast ended up taking last place, 16th, and then Joy Division took 9th, and they were on the bubble. But the Scandinavians have always been very strong. Joy Division was one of the best teams in the game back in the mid 2000s.
Yes, they were.
And Joy Division, they had a real good first day. They beat Carnage and the ML Kings, but then they lost Outrage and they lost to you guys in Impact.
Yep.
That was a very close match, 5-6.
Yeah.
Can you touch base on that one real quick?
Again, I just to do it quickly, I believe that we just went in way too overconfident. We just were not playing as a team, and we were losing points that we shouldn't have lost. Right, like bad points where we were coming off of the game like, what are we doing? It was one of those, like, if you were there watching and announcing, you'd be like, this is not the Impact that we've seen.
Unnecessary deaths,
exactly,
survivability,
exactly.
Unnecessary
check all those boxes.
Yeah.
We were that all event, right? And it's the reason why we took 3rd.
Yeah, which we'll get into a little bit deeper here in a second.
But yeah, that game was pretty much literally checking all those boxes in that thing. That was actually the game where I won move of the event.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to touch base. So it was a 1-on-2, 5-5.
5-5.
Which is a crazy coach call, man. I mean, typically when it's 1-on-2, you're hitting that buzzer, let's reset, and hope to God that, but it was tied. So that's kind of when you're like, I don't know exactly what we should do here. It's Justin.
Yeah, and that's what I said that on my Instagram today, that is probably one of the hardest coaching decisions that you can ever make, right? With a minute left, 5-5 game, a 1-on-2. Do you believe in your guy, or do you save enough time to try to win a 50-second point or a 55-second point?
Which you can win.
Which you can.
Yeah.
Right? Which you absolutely
much higher percentage
can.
than a 1-on-2.
Yeah.
If you go back historically.
So what the guys told me in the thing, Zane had his thing, like he was ready to do the thing, and JC's like, what are we doing? We need to make a decision. Are we blowing the buzzer, or are we letting him play? And I guess Alex Goldman, it was in the pit, was like, no, it's Bacon. Let him play. and so they didn't hit it, and I literally, luckily, I think the reason why they didn't blow it is I think they saw me look at the clock and make that decision, like, okay, there's 60 seconds left, and and I didn't sit back. The second I looked at the clock, I instantly started attacking that Dorito guy, and once I shot him, after that it was...
Which is something to think about. I mean, if you are in that situation, you want to engage.
Yep.
Because if you're not engaging, that's when the coach is going to blow the horn.
Exactly.
If you're hiding in the back corner bunker, hoping you're going to win 2 gunfights in a minute, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, they do have to... If it's tied, obviously this is totally contingent on point spread and a little bit of the time, but that one, or if it's any low body situation, your guys need to be trying to engage, because that's the only way that you really are putting the benefit that's going to go to you from your coach's perspective.
I think in any decision there, if let's say in my position or anybody's position, if that player does not move or try to be the aggressor, then I think at that point, that's when you're like, okay, we need to blow this. Because if he's taking valuable seconds off of the time that your team can win, a minute point or a 55-second point, then at that point, then you would have to blow it.
So Ignition coming in, they did, for a team that they went 1-3. Obviously coming up from semi-pro, but I did want to talk about the Scandinavian style of play, which we've had a lot of experience with. I played for Joy Division actually for a whole season in Europe one time, and I love the Scandinavians. It's a great culture, great people. They are Vikings, old school back in the day, obviously, and they're now a super peaceful culture, but they still have that kind of Viking chip on their shoulder when they play the game of paintball, but they've always been monster gunfighters because they're locked in the the winter abyss of the Northlands, and all they can do is gunfight indoors with Reball for like months on end. And so I would always hate gunfighting any of the Swedes or the Norwegians or the Finns because it was they'd just be tenacious gunfighters. Like, this guy will not go in.
And they have that same style. Like, nothing's changed. Like, it's just the way that they are, being taught the game, that style is still there. No matter what team that comes up, they love to gunfight, and they're good at it.
Yeah, no, they really are good at it. And that's what, but it's the mix of the good gunfighting and the survivability with the aggression. They do win those gunfights. But again, I just, love watching the Scandinavians play. So, Ignition. All right, so jumping back into, speaking about the Scandinavians, we want to see a little bit more out of Blast.
Yeah.
Young team, though. Lots of young players, early 20s, late teens.
They have a lot of talent.
They have a lot of talent.
Yeah.
And that's a team I think could start making waves. Also had a chance to, to talk to like the mom of the team and how she really went to bat for the sport of paintball itself with the government of Norway to help subsidize some of their training and their facility there. So I think.
And did they get those funds?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
That's the story that I heard.
Okay.
And she used to be an Olympic handball player. So she's well known in the athletic community in Norway, and it is just a really cool thing. It's a great
very cool
paintball story.
Yeah.
So I was expecting Blast after what we saw them last year. I was hoping they'd do a little bit better than they did, but they did lose all of their games, and they had a -12, 7 points, 4-19 against.
Do you know if they kept their same roster, the same guys, or did they add or lose?
I think so, but
you would think, right?
Yeah.
After all that.
So we'll see. But that's another one of those younger teams developing story. But when you're on that lower end, that tier, that relegation always comes in there because there's always the next man up, the next team up. Mm-hmm. So I hope for their sake that they can have a better performance at the next 3 events.
Absolutely.
So let's move on and talk about one of the more interesting of the new teams, a team that you're a little familiar with here, and it was the Golden State Kings. Mm-hmm. So when you first heard about this team, what was just give me your thoughts real quick before we break it down.
I didn't even know that they were a team until I got there. And
really?
I had no clue. Okay, look, just a little background on me. When I don't even know who we usually play until that day. Mm-hmm. Like, if you ask me at the event, like, oh, who are you playing today? I usually don't know, right? I don't know why, but I've always been like that because I kind of, in my mind, I'm always like, okay, I'm going to play how I know how to play the field, and it's going to be better than the person on the other side. It doesn't matter who it has to be, right? Once I know that team, and then like the players, tendencies obviously come into play. Yeah. But for the most part, it's how am I going to do my job better than the person on the other side?
Well, and you also know you've been playing so long against the best of the best, so it's not like, oh, it's Dynasty. You don't need to go watch a bunch of tape.
Exactly.
You've played Dynasty 100 times.
I know their tendencies.
You know their tendencies already. But speaking of Dynasty, I mean, you look at the roster for the Golden State Kings. First
it's
of all,
Dynasty.
Number one Golden State Kings. This is a California squad essentially, but it's not a California squad, but there are a lot of Californians there.
Right.
You got Johnny Greer, you got Blake Yarber, Marcelo Margot,
Spica,
Kyle Spica, Ryan Greenspan,
and
Archie Montemayor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hell of a team. When Spica sent me a screenshot of their roster, and I was like, oof, super team coming to Europe.
It's pretty much Dynasty getting a snake player. Yeah. It's what they needed. So I was actually excited to play against them because just having playing against Ryan and Archie and Blake and Marcelo and Spica, it's always fun playing against a team like that. Whenever you get a chance to play against some of these best teams like Russians and Damage and Dynasty and all of these teams, those are those games that I look forward to, right? Mm-hmm. And no disrespect to anybody else, but I've been playing against them for so long. There's automatically going to be that rivalry, whether there's a rivalry really or not.
No, there's rivalry.
In my mind, it's always there. Yeah. It is always there. I always want to beat them, and when I go out there, I'm doing everything that I can to beat them and for my team to beat them. So I was excited once I figured out like who they were. I was excited to play against them. And then that first game against them was a grinder. Was a huge grinder to play against them.
Well, to jump into this a little bit. So, because we are going to be talking mostly about the top 4 teams. Obviously, you're going to mention a lot of these other guys. But, I mean, you had them in your bracket. I mean, you guys played
them the
very first game.
Yeah.
So, you must have got there and went, wait a second, Golden State Kings. Because if you're telling me you didn't know so you did not know who the Golden State Kings were until you were in Europe and Barcelona.
In Europe, in Barcelona, when they were like, because I was like, who are we playing? And they were named all the teams. I was like, who are the Golden State Kings? And they're like, it's one of the pro teams. Like, what do you mean? And they told me all the things. I was like, what? How did they put that team together?
It's Charlie from ML Kings.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't even. I found all of this out when I got there. Like, so I was super excited, and I was happy that they were able to put, because I thought it was only going to be us, Russians, and Heat, right? So once I heard about
the big dogs,
right? Exactly,
the teams that are the most favored.
Exactly. So when they pretty much put an all-star team together and brought them over, so I was pumped that they were able to actually do that.
Well, talk to me about that game. You guys did win that game 5-3, but it was pretty close. Kind of walk me through it a little bit.
They actually went up 2-0 on us. So they scored the first 2 points. And again, it was the same story for us all event, where we beat them on pure, our guys were just better in that moment than they were. And it was, in my opinion, it was me and Mouse. We individually together won that match single-handedly for our team. Our Doritos side, most of the event did struggle, and they struggled in that match against Archie and Blake on that side. So it was a tough match. We ended up actually winning a 2-on-4. Me and Mouse did. We won a 2-on-4. We also won a 3-on-5, and then we won a 2-on-3. So that's
nasty.
So individually we were just better that day, right? And so it was one of those where it was just like, and after those are heartbreakers to lose. When you lose down body or up body situations,
when you
like
lose
that,
high body situations, which they had.
Yeah, when you lose 3 points in a row, when you are the high body situations, those hurt. They hurt the heart, and they hurt the soul, and they hurt the mind. Those are hard to come back from, especially when you do them 3 points in a row and when you're up 2-0 and you lose 3 in a row on up body situations. You're like, man, what else can we do?
Well, they came back strong though, and this is a thing in life when things, it's like the old cliche, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and one of the things I love about the sport that we play, this magical thing called paintball, is that it really does test your mind, your soul, your body. It tests everything. Yeah. And you really do find out what you're made of, and it makes the rest of life a lot easier.
Yes.
Like, they get the volume on regular, like somebody cuts you off, no big deal. You get a parking ticket, who cares?
Yeah.
I had to pull off a 2-on-4 out there, and I'm not going to get shot by the meter maid,
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. But they roared back, and they dominated against Outrage.
Yeah.
They beat them up 5-0. Then they play a real tough game against the ML Kings, which is a different roster a little bit different than we've seen in years past. That was a close game. They won that one 5-4. And then they beat Joy Division 6-5.
Yeah.
So they had some really close games heading into Sunday. And as we well know, when you have those close games, it's fun to blow teams out, but you don't get to fix any problems when you're blowing teams out. Everything seems to be working. All of a sudden you show up at the quarterfinals and you're like, how did we just lose that match? Everything was golden
and that's
Friday, Saturday.
And that's the worst too.
Yeah. So then they go into the quarterfinals. They play Breakout Spa, which is always a tough team over in Europe, coached by Todd Martinez. They have some really good players on the team. They brought Thomas Kim over there. They have Allen. I mean, that's a good squad.
Right.
They won that game 7-5. And then, no, I'm sorry. I was going through your guys' right now. Let me go back to theirs. Hold on a second. The Golden State Kings. So they lose to Impact. Then they beat Red Storm 5-0.
Yeah.
Then they beat the Hurricanes, another 1-point game. They beat Carnage, 1-point game. They beat the Hurricanes again in the quarterfinals. And then they beat you guys 5-0.
They skunked us.
So hold on. We'll get to that in a second when we talk about your guys' trip through the tournament. But then they get smoked by the Russians in the finals.
Yeah. Again, we did not play as a team the entire event. We squeaked by. In my opinion, we squeaked by.
Yeah.
And we won games purely on individual skill.
Wait, save this one for I want to break you guys down a little bit more. But for the Golden State Kings.
Yes, in that match, it was they were the better team that day, right? Through and through, they played better team paintball where we just couldn't. Yeah. So they, again, just like the original match that we played against them in the first game out where we won 5-3, they were destroying us on the Dorito side. The only thing is me, in this situation, me and Mouse just couldn't get it done. They couldn't get it done. Once you dial in it, come Sunday, you're not losing those high body situations. You're not, right?
Especially if it happened early in the tournament.
Right.
Because you go back in the pits, be like, hey, we're not letting that happen again.
Exactly. And you may lose 1 or 2 throughout Sunday. It's going to happen. Like, you're going to lose those bad points, but you're not going to lose 3 in a row. You know, you might give away 1, but on that day, they just knew exactly what to do against us, playing us previously in the prelims, and they learned a lot from their other games.
Well, before we jump a little bit more into talking about your guys, because again, you guys are the favorite, as you guys won the last event in Texas. So I'm sorry, in Vegas. So heading into Texas, you guys are again the best team in paintball, and you are the favorites to win that game. But the team that I think everyone is looking at right now, and the team that won this event, is the Russian Legion. Yeah, the Russians are really good right now. Really good across the board. They have no flaws in their lineup. They're younger players, Karzlov on the D side, Smotrov on the snake side. They've really cut down on those bad deaths that they were having in the beginning of last season. And then when you add Sergey to the mix and how well that guy plays in big moments, and then you add, Kirill and Bertnikov, I mean, that's a superstar squad right there. And I think a team that's going to give you a run for your money this year. If we just look at how the Russians did in Barcelona, they beat, first of all, they went undefeated. So they won every single game. They beat Heat 6-5. So it was a close match against, Houston Heat, our world champs from last year, a team that everyone also thinks that is, obviously has a chance to win every single tournament that they play in. Of course. But that's maybe the 3-team, 4-team race. We don't know who else is going to step up, but we know for sure you guys are legit still after your roster changes because you won the last event here in the States. We know the Russians are legit. And we know Heat's legit. So who of those 3 teams could be, wearing the crown at the end of the year? I don't know. But the Russians looked amazing. So they beat Heat 6-5. Then they beat the new Kiev United team 6-4. So those were their close games. Right. Then they dominate against 5-star 6-1. They blow them out. That's a mercy rule because it's a 5-point mercy rule in Europe. Then they mercy rule PP Arena Pilsen 5-0. Then they mercy rule Outrage in the quarterfinals 6-1. Then they beat up on Heat pretty bad 8-4, which is one of the highest point totals that we saw the entire event. And then they dominate against the Golden State Kings. And I mean, they
skunked them.
If you look at their starting on Saturday, so they had 2 close games on Friday, which is when the coaching squad comes in, then they have their meeting and they start tightening things up. After that, it was just straight gas pedal, and they were phenomenal. And again, 2 mercy rules on Saturday, and then 2 mercy rules on Sunday, and the Heat game was almost a mercy rule kill. So they almost went 5 games in a row with mercy rule wins to win the tournament.
And I said this with the first time I was here on the Go Sports here at the beginning of the year, that in my opinion Russian Legion was going to be the team to beat this year, and I still believe that, whether we won the first event or not. Right, in my opinion, right, the way that I see it and the way that I view it, they, in my mind, are going to be the team to beat, and they are the team to beat. Right.
I was going to be my question to you, and I know because we've been talking about this, and I said the same thing. I was like, look, I know Impact's still going to be legit. We know Heat's legit. Obviously, they just won the World Cup, and we could go down the list. I feel that honestly, there's probably 10 teams this year that if some craziness happens, they could at least have a chance, and really realistically 6 teams that have a real good chance of winning an event. Right. But the Russians, with their refined lineup, I mean, they could be real good for some years going 100%. On now into the future. And
they just know how that camp knows how to win.
Yeah. You've been there.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
That's
what I
goalie
mean.
and American Cycle, bro. Tell that story. Hold on a second. We got to tell the story. Okay, so how old were you at the time?
Oh, 18.
Okay, 18. So a young 18-year-old Justin Rabackoff. Yeah. And if you've heard this story before,
it's 12 years ago.
Just bear with me. But yeah, so long ago in a land far, far away, Justin Rabackoff gets sent off to the abyss of Moscow to refine his paintball skills. And so you go over there, and now this is pre-Netflix. This is back when you had to have the DVDs.
None of that even existed. It was all DVDs and DVD players.
So you're in the dungeon over there, and there was a big target on you because you were the new American pro coming over. So all the Russians want to beat you at one-on-ones and punish you in practices so they can earn their playing time. Yeah. You're like, oh, we're bringing this American over. But there was only 2 DVDs that he had to watch. One of them was Fern Goalie, and the other one was American Psycho, which I think just if you know Justin Rabackoff, that gives you a little insight into his soul right there, because
Yeah.
you know, you're a really nice guy, but
Yeah.
my God, you become a psycho when
I'm on
the
the
time
field.
when the time is right.
100%.
I think it's just like when you told me that story.
Yeah.
We were drinking beers at the end of a tournament in Europe a couple years ago, and you told me that, and I was like, bro, that is perfectly that's you, dude.
And the first time I was over there was no internet. So it was literally my DVD player. And usually at the time when I was going on big trips, I would pack a bunch of DVDs. And for some reason, and I had one of those DVD cases that you open up the book and they had a bunch of different ones in, because I traveled all the time. So I had to have that in, right? So I had that instead of a laptop and my binder of DVDs. For some reason, I pulled my binder out of my backpack. Don't know why, but it was the only, I had American Psycho in the DVD player, and then I guess the other one must have just fallen out, and it was in my bag, no cover, no case, kind of a little bit scratched up, but it worked all the same.
Yeah, and again, no Netflix, and you don't have a ton of friends over there.
And there was no internet.
And you were over there for like a month or 2 months or something like that.
I was over there for 4 weeks, a full month. A full month. So you can imagine how many times I watched each one of those movies. I watched American Psycho more, though.
Yeah, of course.
But
still.
It's
so great.
It's probably the most watched movie of my entire life.
Which again, that just totally describes your personality, because you're super chill.
Yeah.
Until the switch flips, and then you
once it flips, there's no stopping me.
Psycho. Yeah. So no, it totally makes sense. I just thought that story was funny. I could just picture a little 18-year-old Justin Rabackoff stuck in the Russian dungeon playing paintball for 8 hours a day, and then going. You said you like walked across the street. Yeah. And there was like this little shack that you would buy like some sort of food from.
Yeah.
And that was like your ritual.
Yeah, that was my ritual, and I didn't know until it was like the final week that I was there, because I was there for 10 weeks. So it's like my 8th or 9th or 10th week or whatever it was. I didn't know that the area that we were in was apparently super bad. And so I was walking, like I would sometimes, because I would be jet lagged, really jet lagged, right? So I would go and like get food at like sometimes 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
And you're a sleepy bear too. Like,
yeah.
You're not I'm going to stay up. You're like, no, I'm sleeping when I'm going to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So when I would go and make these trips at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I would walk all the way through, and
the shady part of town.
But I had no idea. I had no one told me like, hey, don't leave after a certain time. You might get robbed. Nobody ever told me these things. So I just did as a normal person would do when they're hungry. They go get food, right? And so it wasn't until like I told them about the story. I was like, hey, I went for some food. They were like, what? You left? No, you shouldn't leave. Don't ever leave. And it wasn't until then. But then I just kept doing it. I was like, if I look like I'm normal, and if I look like a person that should be there.
Well, you are Russian.
Yeah, if I look like a person and I didn't stick out like a sore thumb. It's not like I was wearing like trendy clothes. I went over there and I bought like a big Russian jacket, and I did everything, and so I looked normal.
Yeah, looked the part.
Yeah, so I mean it was all fine. I didn't get robbed at gunpoint or anything. It's not like I had anything to give them anyways. What were they going to take? My DVDs?
I was going to say, dude, all I got is Ferngully and American Psycho.
Here you go.
One
of
them? What do you want?
Yeah.
You seen them?
Yeah.
Pretty good. Yeah. So I know you're intimate with the Russian squad, and like you said, when you say, look, that's a program that builds winners.
Yes.
You say that from experience. You've
Yes.
been there. You've won with that team.
Yeah.
In fact, that was kind of where you became a paintball superstar. I mean, you played with us
100%.
on Excessive before that, and you played on some of these teams, but where you really cut your teeth and became one of the best was with the Russians.
Yeah, I give most of the credit to that camp. And I would say anybody who comes out of that camp would have to give any credit to the camp itself. They run that camp exactly as any pro team in any pro sport is run. Right, they're out. They have the gym, they have the indoor, they have the outdoor. Because as you know, their winners are bitter over there. So they do everything that they can, no matter what, to be in shape and do everything that they need to do. Like I said, they breed winners over there, and they know how to do it. They've been doing it for so long.
Does it motivate you a little bit when you see a post from social media in the middle of the off season and they're out running wind sprints and doing drills? and you know that there's 5 foot of snow on the ground,
Yeah.
and it's the abysmal frozen wasteland of Russia in the winter. And does that motivate you? Okay, man, I'm gonna go jog today, or I'm gonna go do some drills today, because you know that those guys, again, which you acknowledge that they're going to be your rivals probably for some years to come because of how young Smotrov is. Karzov's a little bit older, but young in his career and young in his spirit. Karzov's always bouncing around, smiling on his face.
Yeah. I would say no.
Really? That doesn't motivate you at all? God, that would motivate me.
My motivation, especially as of late, comes purely from within. Purely from within. The only motivation that I need is just motivation from myself. Like, if I'm not doing what I believe I need to be doing, then how can I expect to win? How can I expect to be the best if I'm not going out there and just doing it? I don't have to see other people on social media or Ryan Greenspan doing another clinic to be motivated enough to want to win. Like, if you can't find that motivation from within yourself, then how can you expect to be a true champion, right? Sure, those things, they help, but to be honest, I don't actually follow any of the Russians on any social media, so I don't really get to see a lot of it anyways. Mm-hmm. But I know how they practice, and I know what it is they're doing. Just to kind of get off the path just a little bit, I would say that they I'm losing my train of thought here. Actually, but the Russians actually, I'm losing my train.
No,
of
it's
thought
all
here.
good. But so we're just talking about training. Well, there is because when we formed Excessive to basically to beat Dynasty, because Dynasty was the best team at the time, right at that particular moment in paintball. Right. And there was a boxing quote our trainer would tell us all the time, and he would say, this is a famous quote in boxing, is that there are people out there that they go to train, but they know that their opponent is working harder than them.
Right.
I can't fathom those people. Like, how could you possibly expect to, if your opponent is here and they're training harder than you are and you're training this hard and you're here, how in the hell are you ever going to get to here?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Right.
But it's interesting that you say that your motivation doesn't come from what your opponents and your antagonists are doing.
Yeah.
Because you are at a level in your own mind. And again, rightfully so. You've been at this top of this pyramid for a long time, on the best team in the world for a long time, as arguably the best player on the best team in the world. So it doesn't actually shock me that much that your motivation comes from another place. It's not about what they're doing. It's about what I'm doing in my mind, and what I need to do to be the best Justin Rabackoff.
Yeah.
So
because
I get it.
the way that I see it is I want those people to then see what I'm doing and be motivated off of it, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want it to be the other way around. And maybe that, again, like you said, not everybody trains that way, and it's not for everybody, but that's the way that I've always been. It's more of like, okay, I'm going to be the one to raise the bar to the next level and then let everyone catch up to me as I raise it again.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when my generation of the game was coming up in the mid to late 90s, that's how old I am. You can tell by the bald head and the gray hair and the extra LBs. I'm not proud of it. But no one shot left-handed back in the day. It was a handful of guys. And so every day I would come home from school and, because guys are like, oh, I can't afford paint to practice. Like, I can't afford this. And like, I can't stand those excuses, man. And when some people are like, oh, Matty, you don't understand how hard it is to, I have to drive so far. I have to get on a train. I'm like, well, how far do you have to drive?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I have to, drive 3 hours. I'm like, don't be a coward.
Yeah.
I used to have to drive 8 hours one way for practice.
Yeah.
Sometime when we would go to Northern California for practice. So you're not going to find a sympathetic ear over here. And I would go in my backyard, and every day with 10 paintballs, I had a route that I would run, and I would teach myself how to shoot left-handed, because no one else was shooting left-handed. There was just a handful of guys, and then our generation crafted that style, But it didn't necessarily, like you said, it didn't come from, oh, well, what are the Ironmen doing right now?
Exactly.
What are they doing? It was more about like, this is where I feel that the game and our group of our peers at that time, these younger, hungry guys, this is what we want the sport to be. This is what we want our play to be like. This is what we're going to do.
And I was exactly the same. On my ceiling above my bed, I had an Oliver Lang Dynasty jersey. So like, that was my motivation as a child. It was, I'm going to be better than you. I'm going to be better than you. And that was always through my mind. And I always had my gun in my hand. I didn't need paint. When I got home, I had my gun. I had my gun all the time. And I would just snap shoot, watch TV and do whatever. And
so it becomes an extension of your body.
It was a part of me, right? And as you know, like, it is a part of me now. Like, gunfighting is one of my rawest skills. It's one of my best skills that I have. And I believe it, it comes from that. Just it's like a basketball player just walking around, bouncing the ball, going to and from school, bringing the ball around. It's the same thing, and I know that you can't bring your gun everywhere, right?
But still, the
you can do it enough.
Yeah.
The principle is exactly the same. The law still is the same. And actually, as I lost my train of thought before, what I was going to say is that the difference between the Russian camp and how we do it over here is they play 5 days a week, but after I left the Russians and I started when I got on Impact and I wanted to play more because I know what playing more can do for you and how it can make you a better player and just make you as an individual just a better talent. Playing more, I believe, is better, and any other sport does it. Every other sport, they train every single day, right? Or at least 5 days a week. Every single top level of any sport trains really, really hard, better than anybody. But when you talk about paintball, if people ask, like, why don't you play more? And everyone says, and it's the same words, everyone says, oh, I don't want to get burnt out. But in my mind, I've never, that word burnt out has never even, it's never even been brought up in my own head.
But you did get a little bit burnt out going back to the past couple seasons, like you said, where you were kind of on cruise control.
Right.
But now, so that's what I'm kind of just wondering. Yeah. Even though you were still elite, it's like, but again, we're dealing with a different type of mentality. I think everyone, like Rogan always talks about this, like in order to be elite at anything, you gotta be a little crazy.
Right.
Because you have to be so devoted to your craft. That you're willing to expend those hours in literally just holding your gun while you're at home or taking the time to go and run drills at the park with, your gun with the barrel off or whatever you have to do in your own circumstance in order to be better and in order to improve what you're bringing to the table to see how far your natural ability can go in whatever it is that you choose to do.
Right.
But it's that motivation to do those things and to do the extra stuff.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you can't really ever teach. I'm sure you can talk to your in the face and try to get your guys to do that, but it's that burnout thing that when you get guys at the elite level, that's that was always the question with Impact to kind of, when you and I consider it, which we all will throughout the year talk for hours, but
we can.
We do have to wrap it up. But but at moving into Impact, and that was the big question, and that's always the question when you have a situation, at the very level, where it's like, oh, do you want to talk to Bear right now?
No, not right now. We can talk to him.
Hold on, let's just get a real quick one. Bear. Oh, he hung up. All right, so anyway, Impact, burnout. Oh, here he goes. All right, we're gonna get a little brief.
He must be watching. He's got to be watching.
Bear.
Yo, is Matty Marshall live right now on Go Sports Live?
Wait, say that again.
Who's this, Matty Marshall?
Of course it is. You called me. It's definitely Matty Marshall.
Who is this? This don't sound like Matty Marshall.
Are you watching right now?
Bear, we're live.
Are you watching?
You got to be watching right now. I got Justin Rabackoff here. Do you got a quick little thing? We got to sign off here shortly. I still got to talk about Impact. What do you think about Justin?
Oh, put me live right now. I'll tell you everything I think about J-Rab and Impact.
You are live.
We're live. We're live right now.
Live on Facebook right now, or are you live on MySpace?
We're live on MySpace, bro.
I'm just making sure it's Matty Marshall. Listen, this is what I want to say about J-Rab. This is what I want to say about Impact. I want to make it loud. I want to make it proud. J-Rab is the best player in the NXL right now besides Alex Goldman. The fact they play on the same team is amazing. But the fact that Dave Baines doesn't know what to do with them when they're playing is what kills me.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Dave Baines is a soft coach. He doesn't know how to use J-Rab as a weapon. J-Rab's one of the greatest shooters to play the game since Billy Saransky and Spud. But Dave Baines doesn't know how to run a goddamn play. You passed up on a good player by losing Keith Brown. You let Dalton go. You ran the team into the ground. I want facts on Dave Baines, and I want to know what does J-Rab think about Dave Baines being the coach.
All right, well, we're gonna get J-Rab's response, but Dave did coach the team to a win at the last event.
Taking over Go Sports Live. Matty Marshall, don't be soft.
Soft? Well, who are you talking to?
This is spice.
All right, so how do you feel that Dave's running the teim? Look, Bear, we could talk to her blue in the face, which we will, but I mean, Dave's record does speak for itself.
I want Matty Marshall on the phone. Who am I talking to?
You're talking to the one and only, dog. I'm telling you. Hey, we can scream at each other, but the thing is, look, Dave Baines has done an incredibly competent job of coaching Edmonton Impact to multiple world championships and multiple wins.
Use some words that people want to hear. What does competent job mean?
What do you mean, what does competent job mean? That means multiple world titles, tons of wins, finals appearance, domination.
Yeah,
That's what it means.
You can't argue with that.
Sounds like you're trying to get an assistant job for Impact.
Not at all. Not at all. I got a job.
God, dude. All right, you want to know what J-Rap thinks about him, though?
I do. J-Rap. All right, Bear, we're going to sign off here in a second. We'll get you on, though. Keep doing what you're doing.
I want to be on your show. I don't care about your show. I want to know what J-Rap thinks.
Yeah, okay. We're asking what J-Rap thinks, but you must care about the show because you're calling in. All right,
Yeah.
we'll touch base with you later. Peace. I know, we're going to hear it right now.
Go, watch it live, Barry. You're about to hear it.
All right, so what do you think?
I think, okay, and obviously he is my coach, so I'm going to have to politic this question, right? But I think that taking some of the best minds in paintball and putting them all on one team is probably, and then coaching them is probably one of the hardest things that anyone can do, right? When you get that many good players and that many good minds who know how to play the field and know how to play their position better than anybody else, and then you try to bring them all together, it's a very, very tough thing to do.
Been there. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. And it either can go horribly wrong or it can go really well. In our case, it's gone really well, right? So it is a very difficult job to do. Do I think that Dave can do more? Absolutely. Do I think that he can be better? Absolutely.
Do you guys butt heads? I know. Well, let me put it this way.
Yes.
Everyone butts heads on that team.
Yes.
But I think that's part of. You look at Dynasty success.
Yeah.
The part of how the sausage is made is them butting heads.
Yeah.
Because through the butting heads, you will find the most direct route to greatness that you can through those arguments, even though it's hard at the time.
And look, we butt heads more than anybody else on the team. I've known him for so long now, right? I look at him as a brother, right? So when we do argue, it's as brothers, right? So it's mostly, when you argue with a sibling, you make stabs at each other. When you're actually mad at them, you make stabs at each other and you try to hurt their feelings. Mm-hmm. I don't know why people do that. It's just the way it is, but that's the way that we fight, right? In my opinion, I think Dave can do a lot more as a coach. I believe that he is on autopilot like I was maybe last year and maybe the year before, and I think that he can do a lot more than he's actually doing. And again, that's scary to think about, right? That's scary for all the other coaches and all the other teams in the league. But even on autopilot, he's still better than everybody else, right? And that's how I was, in my opinion, my head, that's how I was playing, in recent years. But I think that there's so much more to him, and I think that and I have said this, I think that I haven't, in recent years, haven't been utilized as much as I should be, right? When you look at how Fedorov, when he first got on Heat, and maybe not in the recent tournaments, but when he first got on Heat, and even on the Philly Americans, he played every single position. He played front snake, no matter where they could put him, and he played every point. He played everywhere. How does a team map that, right? How do you map that?
You don't. You react
right?
to what's happening.
Exactly. You just try to do your best game plan that you possibly can and then hope for the best, right? So I believe that I'm one of those players that I can play everywhere. And I proved that in Vegas. I even played the one on the snake side at times. So I do believe that, especially now that I'm in the best shape of my life, that I can play everywhere and I can play every single point.
You want to play the one?
Yeah, absolutely. Mouse can't play the one every single game. He can't run to the snake every game. He can't run to the corner every game. One, that beats your body up. And two, it doesn't matter how good in shape you are not running the snake on the break every single point.
Well, and he's had problems with his shoulder over the years.
Right.
And the more reps he's going to get in there diving on that shoulder, the more chances it could go.
Yes.
And he is the most dominant snake guy on his best days.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, we've said this about a lot of different guys. This is the conversation with Dynasty right now. Who's going to play the one on the snake side?
Yeah.
Saw Marcel in there a little bit. I mean, overall, they did struggle a little bit on their snake side. They struggled. Yeah. I mean, Arturo is fresh off the injury. Matty Kling's not ready yet for the most part, even though I thought Matty Kling played well in Prague for them last year when they won that tournament. Mm-hmm. So it's in there somewhere. It's just not there on the regular basis that you need to excel at this level.
Yes. Yeah.
But that is the question for a lot of these teams, especially with, yes, is Brusselback ready to shoulder the weight if Mouse does get hurt?
Not yet.
So there you
Not
go.
yet.
You
He's
know,
just
so-
not. He's not there yet. I think that maybe he can be, but that's up to him. That really is up to him. That it rests entirely on his own shoulders, and it's the same with Rosati. It rests on their shoulders whether they can step up and be there when Greg can't play, when Brandon Cornell can't play, and when Alex needs a rest.
Well, and when you look at the beginning of your career, so when we played together in Excessive, you were great, you were talented,
Yeah.
but you weren't you yet.
Right.
You know, you had to go American Psycho it up in the dungeons of Moscow to become you.
Yeah.
So, you know, with Rosati and Brusselback, you don't get on Impact unless you're not talented.
Yep.
But that being said, we're talking about the elite of the elite right now. We're talking about Edmonton Impact, you know, the guys on Golden State Kings, Heat, Russians.
Yes.
We're talking about the best of the best on
Right.
planet Earth playing this game. You know, that of the thousands of people that play tournament paintball. So that's the level of greatness that you guys have to continue to stay at the top through the next 4 events.
Absolutely.
And everyone's going to try to come and knock you off.
Yep.
So you're saying you want to play that one at least enough times that people are like, oh, we don't know what J-Rob's going to do right now. You know, in the sense, it makes you guys harder to scout.
In my opinion, the way, and again, this is entirely my opinion, but the way that I believe that I should be utilized, I should be the 2 on the Dorito side, the 2 on the Snake side, going up the middle, and then also when the guys need to rest in the one spot, I can also be that guy, right? To go everywhere, to play the dead zones, to run to the corners.
Can you play every point right now?
I can play.
I think you can because you have been playing every point.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So let's sum up here and talk a little bit about Impact's performance. 3rd place.
Yeah.
You like you said, you guys got off to a little bit of a rough start, but you guys did win all of your prelim games.
Yep.
I mean, you only lost 1 game. I mean,
Yeah.
even the 3rd and 4th, you guys took 3rd because you had to beat Houston Heat, and you beat them up 5-1
Yep.
in that 3rd and 4th place match. You beat the Golden State Kings 5-3. You murdered Outrage 5-0. Had a really close game against the ML Kings, and then a really close game against Joy Division.
Yep.
So that's that kind of on the razor's edge you were talking about, right?
That's where the inconsistency lies. As you see here, the only convincing win that we had was the 5-0 that where we skunked
Outrage.
Outrage.
Who took 7th. They didn't do terrible.
Right.
Yeah.
Where we skunked them in the prelims, but then obviously we didn't really come together as a team until that Heat game where we beat them 5-1. And that's, if you watched any of those games, right? If you watched all of our games, you would see that game, you'd be like, there's Impact. There they are, right? The rest of the games were just a inconsistency, lack of communication, lack of teamwork. It looked bad. It felt bad. The confidence level from myself and me and Mouse had a conversation about it through the prelims. And I said, I was like, dude, if we continue to play, if me and you don't win this event, we're not winning. And that's a sad thing to say, right? But it's the truth, right? So that when you go into Sunday with those thoughts in your mind, it's a recipe for disaster. Because the second that things go wrong, the second that this can implode, your own brain can implode. And when you feel that you have to do everything upon yourself or the one guy next to you, that you feel that me and you, if we don't do something, we're going to lose. That's a bad way to think.
And it can lead to early deaths. It can lead to over battling. It can lead to small mistakes.
And that's what happened to both of us, right? Especially just to speak on my behalf, the second I saw someone die on the other side, I instantly went, okay, I have to win this. And then it led to an early death because I got into gunfights that I shouldn't have. I tried to make a move that I shouldn't have. I tried to fill a corner that I shouldn't have.
You're locked in that snapshot battle.
Exactly.
And just a little too much because you're begging for it.
Right.
You're hoping you get that shot.
I'm hoping that I stay out just enough to shoot an extra 2 balls, hoping that I get that kill, right? Because you're almost forcing it at that point because you just couldn't rely on anybody else. Right. And we just imploded kind of as a team in terms as a confidence level. And we preach control, like the word control. Like the word control on our team is so strong. It's so fierce. It's that one word that at the end of the day we rely on. And we call it controlled chaos, right? Because every game breaks out into chaos.
Into that scramble.
Exactly. Yeah. So controlled chaos is kind of like the way that we preach each player that comes onto our new player that comes onto our team, what we preach to them, like, this is the way that we play. And if you can't mold into the style that we play, I'm sorry, you're just not going to play.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. Like some people have come in and just dominated, like Nick Laval, Keith Brown. Some people have struggled. Chad Bougier did not do well in our system, right? Some people just can't do it, and some people thrive in it, right? But that's the way that our style is played. But for some reason in this event, and I don't know why, after we've had, so much success, we could not find our identity. We just could not find it. And
it showed in that loss to the ML Kings, or to the Golden State Kings.
It showed in all the games, the 5-4, the 6-5, the 7-5, all those games were, and again, no disrespect to those teams, but the way that we see it, as the quote unquote the best team in the world, those games should not been that close, right?
Yeah.
Again, no disrespect to them, but
look what the Russians did in their games.
Exactly. Those games should not be that close, right? We're not going to skunk everybody.
Yeah.
We're not going to mercy rule everybody. But if you were to watch those games, we shouldn't have won any of them, right? We won them on pure raw talent and individualism. That was it.
Well, the good news is that getting punched in the face like that is going to get you guys a little bit tighter for the next event in Texas. So, hey, man, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, again, we could talk for hours as we will. But before we go, speaking of talking for hours, you got some news to break.
Yeah, so I'm actually super excited about this one. And I did it on my Instagram, and I asked a bunch of people. I asked the people if they wanted to see a podcast from myself. And a lot of people, I got the most hype that I've ever gotten on any of my Instagram posts. So I'm actually going to go through with it. We are going to do a podcast. I'm going to co-host it with Nick Laval. And we're going to be coming out with that not this week, but it will be coming next week. So we're going to do an intro to this week and just kind of get the hype going. But next week we will be releasing that, and we will have our first episode. And it's nothing set in stone yet, but we're thinking that every Wednesday we're going to put it out on every single Wednesday. So we'll do it once a week. Even while we're at the events, we will be still releasing the podcast for you guys. So I hope you guys are excited, because I'm excited to actually be able to put out that consistent content that I believe that I should be putting out to the world, and then helping people just to get better and learn more about professional paintball and just paintball in general, and what you need or the skill set to be able to reach that next level.
For sure, man. Well, hey, best of luck to you. It's always
Appreciate
a pleasure, dude. It's good to see what has
so
happened
much.
to you in your career after all these years. And
fun.
still a lot more to go too. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, we do have Cagezilla 55 this weekend. If you like to watch mixed martial arts, it's gonna be going down here in Florida. It's April 6th, this Saturday, and then also May 5th, 3rd through the 5th. The next month is the next event, the second event of the 2019 NXL season. Matty Marshall, Justin Rabackoff, thank you guys so much for tuning in here. Go Sports Live.
Thank you
See
guys.
you guys next time.
See ya.